Is Corbin Burns still elite? Am I buying into Geraldo Perdomo's breakout season? And will Corbin Burns pitch in 2026? We'll talk those names and more as I cover the Diamondbacks on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominick Martino, riding solo today, as you can see, if you're watching on YouTube. And if you are watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that little bell below. It's going to subscribe to the channel and give you a notification every time I drop a new episode. And if you're listening on the audio side of things, 5 out of last 5-star ratings and reviews. We would truly appreciate it if you do that for us as well. And guys, listen, you're gonna want to make sure you're listening. Because we truly appreciate it. Especially this time of year in the off season. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Interesting year. For the Diamondbacks. Corbin Carroll had a little bit of a down year. We'll talk about if he's still elite, where we're going to be drafting him in 2026 when it comes to our fantasy baseball leagues. Ketel Marte, kind of a little bit of unreliable in the lineup. I mentioned Geraldo Perdomo at the top. Breakout year for him. I'll be buying in. They got the young gun in Jordan Lawler. What is his, outlook for 2026? Will Corbin Burns pitch in 2026? Ryan Nelson, breakout season from a pitcher. And then at the end, we'll talk about a couple of top prospects on the Diamondback system, like Ryan Waldschmidt, who is he, and Slade Caldwell. So as normal, we're going to do the bats first, then we'll get into the pitchers, and then we will talk top prospects as we break down the Diamondbacks from a fantasy baseball standpoint. And where better to start than with, arguably their best player, Corbin Carroll, right? Now, like I said, mixed bag for Carroll in, 2025. He was still really good, but just not elite. I wouldn't put him in, that top, 5 to, I want to say he was taken in the top 10 last year. I don't think he finished as a top 10 player. I am going to fact check myself here, but I would say that he didn't. Corbin Carroll played 143 games this past season, 564 at-bats, 107 runs, 32 doubles, 17 triples, 31 homers, 84 RBIs, 32 steals, and he hit 259. So I like this step back, step forward, and, back in the right direction with the batting average, up from 231 last year, 259. The home runs went up. The runs went down to 107 and still really good. The RBIs at 84, really nice. Steals, 3 less steals. The walks went down, strikeouts went up. Don't like that from the young Corbin Carroll. Still a really, really good year. But I still feel like there's another level here, to Corbin Carroll, right? I think that, actually give me 1 second here as I backtrack. I have ADP pulled up from the past season. Where was Carroll coming off the board? 11th, right? He was coming off the board as the number 11th pick. I want to say that at that point, we were kind of hoping he can get back closer to the 285 batting average in 2023. We do, like I said, love that the home runs go up from 22 to 31. It's definitely a step in the right direction. But I want to say that Carroll still, I still think he's worth the first round pick in 2026. I think we'll get him around the same spot. Maybe he's jumped up a little bit, with the batting average going back up, the power taking a step up. I want to say in points leagues, I don't really love the wrong step in the batting average. I mean, not the walks and strikeout department, but it's not killing us. It's not something that's going to be super detrimental. Even in an underlying standpoint, Corbin Carroll, he did some right things. We like to see. All of the power stuff was believable. As I said, when you're looking at the underlying stats, the exit velocities are great. He barreled the ball well, hit the ball really hard. The bat speed was there. And even I was talking about earlier how the batting average could be better. The underlying stuff believes in that. When you're talking about X batting average at a 274 compared to his 259 batting average. So everything is really pointing up for the young Corbin Carroll. 25 years old, has had his bumps and bruises along the way. But at, only 24 being 25, this upcoming season, I think the world is his oyster. He finished the year as number 12 overall player. I talked about how he was taken as the number 11 overall player. So it really wasn't too much of a loss. I just really think that we thought he was going to take an even bigger step than he already did. So I'm still in that mindset that in 2026, Corbin Carroll has upside of being like, I want to say it's like a top 5 overall fantasy player because the speed's legitimate. He's in the 98th percentile sprint speed. Carroll's one of the fastest guys out there in all of baseball. So if he keeps this, power gain with this speed, that he has, and then could hit 270, 280, like I said, you're talking about a monster Corbin Carroll breakout possibly in the cards for 2026. So I believe he should be taken in the first round next year. I tell you guys, I've been messing around my 2026 rankings. If you guys are still, tuned in this time of year and, you've been listening to episodes, you probably heard me say that a couple times at this point. I'm pulling it up here. Let's see where I have Carroll at outfield. I currently have him at outfielder number 6. Could even see him at 5. Honestly, could even see him at 4. I don't want to keep playing that game, but 3. Let's say I'm gonna be a little bit I'm gonna be a little bit aggressive. I want to say I have Judge 1, Soto 2, Carroll over Acuna and Tucker, maybe, because those are the next guys I have there. Schwarber, Julio Rodriguez, those ones are debatable as well. James Wood, another great outfielder, but I feel just like Corbin Carroll, man, there's just the underlying stuff likes it. So I really think we should too, because this kid, was the number 1 overall prospect a couple years back for very good reason. So Corbin Carroll, I'm going to get me a lot of shares, I think, next year. I'm going to be aggressive with him in the first round come 2026. But let's keep things moving. Let's go on to our next bat, and let's talk about Ketel Marte, second baseman over there in Arizona for those Diamondbacks. So another just, steady Eddie year from Ketel, 87 runs, 28 bombs, 72 RBIs, 4 steals, 283 batting average. You kind of got what you expected from him. That's really who he is these days. Good power, good counting stats. He was taken as the 3rd second baseman, and I'm pretty sure he finished right there, if not maybe even 1 spot higher on the year, because second base was a tough year. Actually, Ketel Marte finished as the 5th second baseman off the board. But, you still really like what he did. And, I don't think it was a bad investment because he, still was there for most of the season. And you really didn't have to worry about him. He was pretty much a set it and forget it kind of player this past year. So, I read you off those, I read you off those numbers for Ketel Marte. You look at the underlying stuff, I know he's getting a little bit older, 32 years old, but everything, is positive. But the power is very believable. He knows how to take a walk. The X batting average was even better than his actual batting average at 283. As I mentioned, there was a 298 X batting average. The slug was really good at a 548 slug, 94th percentile. The barrel percentage was great at a 13.5. Hard hit rate was really good, at 47%. So everything that, Ketel Marte, did this year is backed up by the underlying stats. I know he's getting a little bit older, but I just think he's so reliable at a position that is tough because you know what? The Ozzie Albies, the Marcus Simeons, struggled this year. Even Mookie Betts, not a great year for Mooks. So, the whole thing is, Jazz was pretty good. Other than that even Jordan Westberg was banged up and he wasn't great either. So out of all of the top second basemen that were taken, just really Ketel and Jazz, held it down. As I mentioned, a lot of those other guys just didn't do it. So I think heading into 2026, Ketel Marte is just going to be one of those reliable guys. I actually put Ketel Marte as number one second baseman going into 2026. I think that's definitely debatable. You got Bryce Terang, took a step forward. Nico Horner, super reliable. But, even Mookie, if he retains a second base eligibility, is an argument. But just, I can't be mad at Ketel Marte at this point in his career. Before we move on and we talk about Geraldo Perdomo, breakdown his breakout season, we talk Jordan Lawler, and then we go into pitching. We talk about Corbin Burns, those names and more coming up next. And all right, guys, I want to talk to you about my friends over at Game Time. There's nothing like catching a baseball game live. The energy of the crowd, the chance to see your team in person, but actually getting the tickets, that's the tough part. Queues, login screens, surprise fees, it all takes the fun out of it. That's why I use Game Time. The app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time at the best price, plus all the fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. The app makes it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying, and that's just so awesome, so then you don't have a poll in front of you or anything like that, right? Fees are included. Know your total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. I love the zone deals too. Pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've ever bought tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. And all right, guys, let's just jump back into it. Let's talk some Geraldo Perdomo. Great year for Perdomo. And honestly, I feel like not that we saw it coming, but you could have seen it coming because Perdomo has been good for a couple years now. And, if you bought in to the 2024 season, it paid off tenfold, in the 2025 season. Perdomo had 597 at-bats. He had 98 runs, 20 bombs, 27 steals. He hit 290 and was just pretty solid. 20 home runs, is a big step up from the 3 last year, but, Perdomo did play a lot more games. So I that's the one just part of Perdomo's game that I don't know if I'm buying into like the 20 home run power or expecting him to take a step forward in that category. But everywhere else, man, Perdomo, it's pretty believable that, he can be a pretty good fantasy baseball player for us. Still only 25 years old. Was an all-star all the way back in 2023. So, even though I said he was good last year, he had the glimpse in 2023, even though the overall numbers weren't there for Perdomo. He had 100 RBI this season, too. I don't even think I mentioned that. Played in almost every single game. He only missed one this year, 161 games for Perdomo. So, he was very reliable. I think, again, 27 steals also might be a lot. I said the power might be the only thing that's not believable. The speed, a little questionable too. 44th percentile in sprint speed. He has the will to go do it, so great. But is he actually that fast? No. But he stole 16 bags, 407 at-bats back in 2023. Last year, he stole 9 and 337 at-bats. So as I said, he has the will to do it, but I think it's more of a sneaky 2020 kind of guy than it's like, oh, he can definitely be a 2020 guy. Underlying stuff in batting average, his ex-batting average is 285. And when I talk about these stats, the average exit velocity was really bad. Barrel percentage was bad. Hard hit percentage was bad. Bat speed was bad. So a lot of those underlying statistics for, power really didn't match up. But he really, knows how to take a walk, so he's helping you in points leagues as well. 94 walks to only 83 strikeouts, one of the best guys in the leagues at, getting those walks and not striking out. So I still like Perdomo for 2026. I currently have him ranked as the 8th shortstop going into 2026. So I think that's a nice little sweet spot for him. I don't know how many shares I actually have. It just kind of depends where the ADP winds up. We could check where the 8th shortstop went off the board last season. That's pick 41. So I definitely wouldn't be taking Perdomo at pick 41 because, like the whole thing I said, people might be expecting Perdomo to take a huge step forward, but I kind of think this is the ceiling. I think the ceiling is the 20 home runs, 27 RBIs, 100 season with a 290 batting average. So I'm not expecting Perdomo to be much better next season, but do I think a 17 homer, 22 steal season with the 290 batting average and great walk to strikeout ratio is legitimate with good counting stats? Definitely within the world of possibilities for Geraldo Perdomo for sure. But let's move on. Let's move on to one of the another young gun here on the team. Let's talk about Jordan Lawler. Lawler, interesting young player, man. Can he be more than a quad A? I mean, quad A player. If you're not familiar with the term, it's when a guy could just dominate AAA and just doesn't really get it done when he comes up to the bigs. And it was another, small sample size of that from, Lawler this year. He got 28 games in the big, 66 at-bats. 9 runs, 7 doubles, no homers, 5 RBIs, stole 2 bags, hit 182, had 6 walks to 26 strikeouts. But once again, Lawler in the minors this year in AAA, 63 games, 259 at-bats, 52 runs, 22 doubles, 5 homers, 11 RBIs, 11 home runs, 50 RBIs, 20 steals, 36 walks and 70 strikeouts at 313. I just don't know if Lawler can be more. It might take him time. We always say, I always like to say on this podcast, progression isn't linear. Prospects, grow at different rates. But the only underlying stat that gives me anything, in the small sample size of Lawler in the bigs this past season is just that 98th percentile in sprint speed. It was really, really fast while he was up in the bigs and can steal you those bases. But, he's got to work on being able to put the ball in play and, getting that batting average up so he can actually get on base. He needs to work on, those walks a little bit, which, in the minors, his walk to strikeout ratios aren't atrocious. They're not really something I'd say is of super detriment that I've seen in looking at his stats in the minors. But in the bigs, he's just not getting it done. He's not getting it done. Very remembrance of it reminds me of a Jared Kelenic or a Joe Adele before this past season. It might take him some time before he can figure this out in the bigs. And, good thing that Lawler is still only 22 years old. So there's time for him to get it done. Or he's 23 now, but was 22 for most of this past season. So let's see what it brings. I think he'll have the nod for opening day as long as Lawler is healthy. It looks like they're going to slot him in at third base going into 2026. So we'll kind of just see where, the win takes Mr. Jordan Lawler heading into, next season. Let's sneak this next guy in real quick. Let's talk a little bit about Gabriel Moreno, the catcher over there. Somebody just, who had, or at least I know I did, had big aspirations for him. He's a big minor league prospect over with the Blue Jays before he came over to the Diamondbacks in a trade a few years back. But, man, this kid can hit for batting average. We saw it this year, 285 batting average in 83 games, 277 at-bats, 44 runs, 12 doubles, 9 homers, 40 RBIs, 2 steals, 29 walks to 53 strikeouts. He could be even better than that with the plate discipline we've seen in the past. But, banged up year for Moreno. He has yet to really be healthy for a full season, at any point in his career. In the bigs yet. I think he could be a sneaky sleeper kind of pick for 2026. if you want to wait at catcher, if you're playing a 2-catcher league. My catcher rankings, I have Moreno as the 22nd catcher overall. So, there's upside here in, this play. I think if Moreno played 130 games, you're talking about maybe a 15-homer guy, possibly 75 runs and RBIs each, and could hit you 285. So, it's going to be a spot where, hey, maybe I leaned into a little bit too many power hitters that aren't good batting average guys. The rest of my roster, you wait for a guy like Moreno, you're going to get good batting average, decent counting stats, and hey, you know what? You tag on a little bit more power as well, because I think Moreno, like I said, could tap into potentially like 15-ish, maybe 18-ish home runs, depending on if he could, take a step forward in the power department. Because, like I said, he's not a huge guy at 5'9", 195, but I've seen like the steps in the right direction when it comes to hitting more home runs. Every year, kind of just starting to see a little bit more power in the kid. So I wouldn't be shocked if he gave you 15 to 18. But that's kind of where I'm at with the catcher Gabriel Moreno for these Diamondbacks. And before we get into pitching and prospects, with names like Corbin Burns and more coming up next. And all right, guys, I want to talk to you about my friends over at FanDuel, right? The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you just don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put $5 down, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I built parlays, tried player props, and even followed live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app and get started today. And all right, guys, let's keep going. Let's keep going with the, moving to pitching here. We'll talk some Corbin Burns. Corbin Burns, it was really not much of anything from Burns this year. Went down to Tommy John, and it was early. I believe, what did he get? 1 or 2 starts. I'm going to give you the exact amount in a second. It was 11. Wow, it felt like a lot less. And I'm a big Corbin Burns owner. Got him in a couple of dynasty keeper spots. But it was 11 starts for Burns. He had a 2.66 ERA, 64 innings, 63 strikeouts, and a 1.66 whip. While he pitched this year, Burns as a 30-year-old, it's going to be tough, because I think, he's going to come back next year, probably be towards the end of the season, if anything, and he's going to be 31, year older. It's going to be tough. I don't know if we're drafting him, in redraft leagues next year. You keeper dynasty formats, it's going to, you could probably trade for him for a bare minimum at the moment. I don't think he comes back and he's the sub-3 ERA, K per inning kind of guy. I still think he could be useful. I just don't think he's an ace anymore. I think it's going to be tough for a guy like Burns. I think if you look at his, 2023 season and you see like the 3.39 ERA, I don't think he's going to give you that K per 9 that you saw that year, but maybe he has like a 110 whip, and then that could even struggle. Corbin Burns' whip could be the last thing to come back. That's usually what happens when pitchers coming back from big arm injuries. Tommy John, the whip is usually one of the last things to return. So I might even be selling him a little bit high here. I won't be taking Burns next year. In 2026, drafts, if you get him late, maybe throw him on your IL and hope he can come back and give you something, sure. But I think he's going to get pushed up. I think people are going to be like, oh no, there's still a shot that Burns could be an ace. I don't believe in it, because we're starting to see, kinks in the armor over the past few seasons, whether it was, he lost the strikeouts in 24, or like I said, the higher ERA in 23. And in 25, this last year, the whip was a little bit elevated at a 1.16. And then even, Corbin Burns' FIP over the past 3 years, you got a 3.81, a 3.55, a 3.94. FIP is fielding independent pitching. ERA indicator kind of tells you where the ERA should be rather than where it was, which was sub 2 out of the last 3 seasons. So Burns, for me, is probably a no-go going into the 2026 season. But, like I said, if it's a last pick dart throw, if we can get him at that price. Sure, if we're paying, Burns could still come back and be an ace kind of price, I'm probably not buying in at that point. But let's keep things going. Let's talk about a pitcher I actually think, has some decent value going into, 2026, and it's actually Ryan Nelson. I joked around when Burns got hurt. I was like, here comes Ryan Nelson, the Corbin Burns replacement. But I said, let's not joke about it too much. Let's take it a little bit serious because there's a chance that Nelson can be useful because he was useful in stints in 24. So I was like, in 25, hey, there's still a shot here. And, I picked up Ryan Nelson a couple spots and didn't drop him. That's one of my mantras as well, is that hey, sometimes we'll pick up a guy, with not, high expectations, and you look back at the end of the year and he's still on your roster. Nelson was one of those guys. Nelson, 23 starts. It was 33 games overall. It came out of the pen for 10 games, a 3.39 ERA, 154 innings pitched. He had 132 strikeouts over that time and a 1.07 whip. So Nelson, like I said, he was just somebody that was very reliable. I don't think he's going to be a top 50 arm for me going into, 2026, but maybe you take him as an SP6, SP7. I think that's going to be a decent spot. So far, I've ranked 51 starting pitchers. Nelson has not made it in there yet, but like I said, there's a chance that, he could, be a SP6, SP7 on your team and be somewhat useful. The fastball got good results this year for Nelson, averaged about 96 miles an hour on that. Batters hit 207 against it. His cutter was, got better results in 2024, but still got hit against it at a 268 clip. Slider was really, really good pitch for Nelson. Got hit at a 211 clip against it, and the curveball was a big curveball too. Got good movement on that one, and batters hit 222 against it. And then the fastball got really, really good movement on that. So Nelson is a guy that, I somewhat believe in going into 2026. Definitely will take him as, like I said, SP6, SP7. Let's get into the top prospects here when we're talking about these Arizona Diamondbacks. Their top prospect overall is Ryan Waldschmidt. He is a first baseman. They go from a Goldschmidt to a Waldschmidt. Oh, I'm sorry, not first baseman. He's a big boy. He's an outfielder, 6'2", 205. And the kid Waldschmidt took a nice little step forward here. In 2025 across 2 levels in the minors. He had 289 over 134 games, 114 runs, 27 doubles, 3 triples, 18 bombs, 78 RBIs, 96 walks to 106 strikeouts, and he stole 29 bags. So, Waldschmidt being a big guy, he still has a little bit of speed on him. So I love to see that. A nice little power speed combo. Could be a 25 homer, 30 steal kind of guy with some good counting stats in this Diamondbacks lineup. I do think there's a chance he gets the call here in 2026. Not somebody I think that we're going to have to be drafting, out of, spring training unless he wins a job. They do have Carroll, Blaze Alexander, and Alek Thomas, but you know what? I haven't been super impressed by Alek Thomas or Blaze Alexander specifically, so we'll kind of just see how, Waldschmidt looks coming into 2026. And as I said, he is 23 years old, or I don't know if I mentioned that, so he's kind of getting a little bit older, and I talked about he did make it into Double-A last year for 66 games and hit 309 over that time, so I do think they'll give him the chance to, potentially win the job. Once again, that's big Ryan Waldschmidt. And to close today's episode, we're going to talk about Slade Caldwell, another outfielder for this Diamondbacks team. He's their number 2 prospect overall. Obviously, Obviously, Waldschmidt's ahead in the pecking order, but just wanted to mention, Caldwell, because he was their first-round pick in 2024, 29th overall, and he's super, super fast. Stole 25 bags in only 114 games last year across 2 levels, hit 260, had 138 strikeouts, 91 walks, 3 homers, and 83 runs. So, like I said, he's a speed demon. He's going to get you a lot of runs, a lot of steals. Definitely somebody I'm interested in dynasty formats. Probably not going to be a redraft kind of guy for 2026. But guys, that is going to be it for today's episode. Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen each and every day. Make sure you check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. But guys, until next time, see ya.